Hello, and welcome to Technology for Humans. Today, we're discussing the subject of why AI pilots die after the demo has been done and what that failure is from demo to pilot to production. It's a common problem, not just for AI pilots, but actually for software development in general. I'm going to talk specifically about AI pilots. Here's what happens. The demo worked well. The salespeople, the solution engineers showed you a great demo. It worked well with your data. It seemed to impress everybody who was around the table at the time or in the meeting. And so we get it into a pilot, and the pilot might have indications that it's going well, or it might not be successful at all. But it doesn't move on from there to a production tool. And if it does, it's not one that actually gets used. So we call that, of course, a failure. So why do we get into this situation? No one's using it. The bills are being paid, but it's actually not returning anything for your business. The reason is rarely that the AI model that you selected or the actual piece of software itself stopped working. They actually failed because the organization was testing the wrong thing. They were testing the technology, but not the systems and the inputs of the business around that. Let me explain this. There's an important distinction here to make. Models, AI models, can produce incredible outputs given exactly the right prompt, and they can be gotten to do this on demand. However, what you're looking at in your business is a narrow task. It's not broad knowledge, it's narrow knowledge, and those tasks might need to be particularly fine-tuned for exactly that purpose and that use case. The approximate answer or the general answer isn't going to be sufficient. It needs to be an exact answer. And the other one is, of course, the obvious. Where there's favorable conditions presented, then the technology can appear to do extremely well. So a pilot really needs to test, once it's moved out of that demo phase, the pilot really needs to test, is the output dependable? Is it things that can then go on to be used to make important changes or to improve things in the business? Does it fit real workflows, or are those workflows so curated for the pilot that it doesn't work in the real world? Are people actually going to use it? That means, are they properly trained on it? Do they have considerations or reasons why they don't want to use it? Can the failures themselves, the points where it stops working, can they be fixed? Is there someone assigned to it? Is there a path to getting them fixed? And do the economics of it make sense? In other words, does the cost of it outweigh the benefits involved? A point that is often overlooked by people other than the CFO of a business, I guess. A demonstration really just shows what's possible. It doesn't show that it can be done or is being done. It just shows a possibility of something being done. The pilot itself needs to show the viability in all of those points that I just mentioned. Let's break the failure points down. First one is this: no defined business outcome. Often we have these goals in a pilot like, let's see if it works. Can we improve the productivity or the efficiency of the business? Let's build a chatbot. Can we use our data more effectively? These are broad goals. They can't be measured. They can't be defined exactly. So let's define them. So if we want our pilot to be successful, we need to find those goals very precisely and make them measurable goals as well. So if it reduces time, how much time was saved? Demonstrate that. If it saves money or makes money for the business, how much and how? If we're going to remove duplicate data entry, how does that work? Where is the duplicate data entry? Let's actually see that in action. If we're going to save employees time, where is that done? How is that done? These are just some of the things we could look at. And we could look at exactly how these might work as well. For example, if we're going to help our employees find information faster, you might be able to have one employee in a call center, as an example, who is receiving information and receiving calls, I should say, and providing answers to those calls. So a call comes in for something unusual, not the regular call of how do I reset my password, but something unusual, something which isn't part of general knowledge for the call taker. The call taker has to use their computer to search for, find the answer, read through that answer to make sure it makes sense for them, and then give that back to the user, step them through it, make sure they understand it, and apply that. How long does that take to do? Now we have an AI tool. Perhaps it's listening in on the phone call, with permission, of course, listening in on the phone call. And as the user is explaining their problem, it's already searching through the database, comes up with an answer and presents it in such a way that it can just be read as a script to the user. Here is the solution to your problem. Does this make sense? Do you understand that? Do you know where to find this? Those sorts of questions can then be asked by the call taker. You could look at, is this saving time for the call taker? Maybe it provides a better solution or a solution which is higher quality, and we might look at that in the next failure point as well. Okay, well, moving on then to failure number 2. The second failure is no real defined definition of quality. So we looked at, what's the measurable goals, and we could call that the quantity. Let's look at the quality of what we're receiving back. And quality is, of course, extremely important because we can get lots of things off a production line, but if each of them have things that need to be done to make them actually usable, then we've got low quality, and that's not great. Quality needs to be measured as well, and we have to work out how to do that. Go back to our call center example again. A call center could measure quality by getting surveys done, could be measured by does that same person call back again or email us, or do they stop using our product? So these are some ways we could test the quality of our answer. A high quality answer would mean the user continues to use it, will continue to re-sign their subscription, would not need to call back again, at least not on the same problem. No new tickets are assigned, or the ticket number the number of communications within each ticket is reduced, would indicate higher quality perhaps. In order to determine quality, you need to set a baseline. So there needs to be something to compare it to. Really goes for the quantity statistic as well, but for quality, it's very important to have a baseline of how happy were people before and after. Another point which is important on quality is the AI tool might be fixing problems for you, but are those problems the main ones or the larger ones? So a good AI tool will help us to solve some of the more complex and difficult problems that otherwise weren't being solved, or at least not being solved easily. And we could define that as being a higher quality tool as well. Something that just defines and solves the problems that are coming up all the time that we already know how to solve, probably not going to help us all that much. Another point that's important in quality is that different stakeholders within a business and around the business would define that differently. So you have to decide which target audience or which demographic you're going to listen to the most. For example, senior executives, C-level, might be thinking about retention of customers. They might be thinking about volume of subscriptions. They might be thinking of value of subscriptions. A user might care, obviously not about those things, but care about, is the tool doing the thing that I want it to do? And I'm sort of thinking in terms of a SaaS product here, but it could be anything. Do I have problems that I need to call about? How easy it is to fix things, that sort of thing. So different stakeholders will have different viewpoints. A CFO is going to think differently to a CTO, is going to think differently to an engineer on the tools. Think about that. Okay, next failure point is this. Number 3, there's only a few of these. Next one is the pilot sits outside of what we call the normal or routine workflow. So when you pilot something, you want it to use as closely as possible the real world parameters that the actual production environment will be in. In fact, they should be the same and just a subset of users. There's no question with a demo, you're using a curated set of data. You're using a set of data which we know already exists. We understand everything that's in it, and we know when we ask a specific question to that data, we know exactly what the output will be. Demos are like that. We already know what's going to happen before we do the demo, or at least 99% of the time. I can think of a couple of occasions when that hasn't been true, happily, successfully as well. But in the pilot, we shouldn't be using sandbox data. We should be using data which is real to the business. We also, of course, have to be cautious about how that data is altered or processed. So results, at least in the early stages of a pilot, should be human checked. There needs to be human in the loop, so to speak. So that data being changed from real world databases or documents has an approval of a human before going ahead, until we're certain that the pilot's being successful on these things. Some of the way it can be unreal as well is users can be using the AI tool that we have as a pilot, but comparing it to something else at the same time. And in doing so, biasing the data. The outcome might be a combination of two tools, but assigned to the AI tool, if you know what I mean. So they might be using older tools or other tools that they have at their disposal. So watch for that. And again, that might be necessary in the early stages while staff are trying to come to grips with it and being able to trust it and be confident with the answers. They might want to do that. But just be aware of that, in particular when we're evaluating outcomes. Sometimes staff will resort to doing things manually in order to make the data work. And we have the problem of course, enthusiastic staff who really want the tool to work. And so they might not fake it, but present things in a very good light as opposed to what might be actually real. Make sure as well that all of the integrations that are normal to the business are available to the staff that are doing the pilot. So again, that means, that sandbox tool, it doesn't have access to all of the normal integrations of the business. It's going to fail on that because those integrations are needed. The normal workflows of a business are needed. A pilot should be, again, a significant portion of staff, not everybody, of course. And that way you can evaluate something with some realism attached to it. The fourth failure point, there's only 5 of these. The fourth failure point is the ownership of the tool. In software, we have this person called the product owner. The product owner is the person who is fully responsible for the software tool being used in a business, is responsible for the bugs and getting them corrected, is the sole contact point between the business and the vendor, at least when it comes to the production and use of the tool, is responsible for assigning users and so on and ensuring that the outputs are what they're supposed to be, basically. So there has to be a product owner with an AI pilot. So that person would be the sponsor. They might be the technical owner as well, although the technical owner could be somebody different. They wouldn't necessarily be the risk owner, but they would communicate with the person who is, and that might be someone in legal, or it might be C-level, or it might be someone else more senior, but that responsibility would need to be held. They could even be the business owner. If it's a smaller business, that would be okay. That person needs to be observing and looking at those quality and quantity points that I mentioned at the top here, those 2 failure points, understanding those outputs, getting the information from the users as they happen. So real time, or at least close to real time usage information, meeting with those people, understanding what barriers they ran into or what surprising results they got. They have to figure out what to do if the quality starts to decline, like it started off well and started to get worse, or if it started badly. What happened? Where did we go wrong? Making sure everything that needs to be connected is, make sure that data is real and usable by the people within it. Being able to communicate to the vendor and saying, hey, this thing's not working. Can we fix it? Let's get this right. And also making sure and being responsible for the security and the output being used in a responsible way. This would all be part of the responsibility of the product owner in this case. And the last failure point is a pilot often avoids the difficult things. It avoids the edge cases, the fringe of what we might expect. Although you could argue that in a business, it's almost all edge cases. I say that because unusual things come up, and when they do, they occupy most of the time and attention of the business. The things that are routine and happen all the time and are expected, they just come and go. We can have this experience where the edge cases in a pilot can be ignored because they're edge cases. We go, well, I don't think the tool's ready for that. And they never get tested. And so as a result, they never actually get ironed out before it goes into production. Suddenly it's in production, and that one edge case that doesn't work consumes all of the time and is the failure point of the tool because no one's willing to use something that might fail. Even if it's that 1 in 100 times, it doesn't matter. It's going to fail on that thing that we actually need it on. Again, those enthusiastic users might ignore the things that aren't quite working right and fudge it, not intentionally, but, they want it to work, of course. The high-risk decisions, the ones that, and this is like those edge cases, those high-risk decisions, the ones where we are unsure about, well, should we let the AI tool actually loose on this? They're not the ones that are used. And then finally, you get that manual intervention that I mentioned earlier coming in where either the users or the product owner or even the vendor might alter things, intending it to work later, but never getting around to it. So they're the failure points. If you want to see if your pilot is actually ready, obviously we're testing for these failure points and we're covering them as we go. Here's some questions you could ask. What measurable outcomes, what KPIs, what statistics are we measuring out of this that if we improved would mean this pilot was more successful? So have a look at that based on the statistics and the output that you're getting and the quality of what you're getting. Next question is, are we evaluating quality correctly? Have we actually nailed the quality of this tool? Answer this question. How does our tool fit into our current workflow? Does it fit into the current workflow? Map it out. Is it outside of or inside of the current environment? And does it have the same lines coming to it and going out of it, basically, if you're going to do an architectural diagram? Who owns the exceptions? Who owns the failures? Who takes responsibility for the output and for the correction of it, for the staff and for the tool itself? And what happens when things go wrong? What do we do about that? What do we do if the staff are using the tool incorrectly? What do we do if the output is incorrect? And to wrap up here, Not all pilots need to be successful. That's why we do a pilot. We do a pilot to determine, is this tool actually going to be used? So we have to have some reality about that. We have to have that decision point grounded in something real in order to decide if the pilot goes ahead or not. And there's no issue with stopping a pilot if it's not right, if it's the wrong tool or the wrong processes or the wrong system for your business, or the staff just plain don't like it. You don't have to forge ahead with it. And you definitely are going to want to stop that before you start paying for expensive licenses or purchasing an expensive piece of software. Don't get into that. You might find the risk unacceptable. You might, or in collaboration with the executives of the business, decide that the risk of using that AI tool is just too great. And you might be in a sector or a vertical where that is more important than others. Maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's finance, maybe it's government. And you have to decide, is the risk acceptable here? Am I mitigating that to the right extent? Are the staff trained around that enough to know when to use it and when to not? Is the data in your business ready? And again, we've used a siloed piece of data, section of data to test and to pilot, which we probably shouldn't have done, but we did. Is the data of the business ready? Is it clean? Is it secure? Is it all in a single place, at least for a particular subject? These are very, very important things. So get the data right first. Make sure it's accurate. Make sure it's not all full of duplicates. Make sure it has a complete set of information. And you might find in doing a pilot that the problem wasn't quite as bad as you first thought. In other words, the cost of purchasing or licensing a new tool and the cost of training the staff up and the cost of fixing the things as they come up, maintaining that is not worth the benefit. The benefit might be some saved hours, or it might be some improved customers, or it might be some extra re-signs, or it might be some additional income to the business. Weigh out the advantages there. Is it great enough to go, yes, we're going to execute? If it's not, don't have to go ahead. Just don't go ahead. It's that easy. So to finish up here, an AI pilot becomes a product that's used in production only when it has a verifiable outcome, an evaluated method, and a workflow with an owner and an understood failure point, if that happens. Next, we're going to be looking at how to choose a technology provider, a technology vendor, and how that decision should be made using the correct evidence, the correct information, which might be a demonstration or it might be other things. So hope to see you then. Bye.